Welcome or welcome back to Believing Thomas. My name is Maeve and I'm so happy you're here. I make videos exploring topics related to faith, doubt, and human design, so if any of that interests you, then you're in the right place. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual. We're not talking specifically about Christianity today. We're primarily going to be talking about how we go about asking questions in our everyday lives in the pursuit of truth and how we go about communicating with ourselves. I'm really excited for this topic, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, there have been plenty of times in each of our lives where we hear something and we object to it, or maybe we're not sure about it, and these objections tend to take one of three forms. So there's intellectual objections, emotional objections, and volitional objections. Intellectual objections, of course, is anything pertaining to our reason. These objections have to do with facts and logic and our reasoning ability. Emotional objections are things that raise alarm bells in our hearts and strike us as being offensive, problematic, wrong, etc. Volitional objections are those pertaining to our sense of autonomy and our ability to choose and what we want our life to look like, etc. So, just as an example, within Christianity, examples of intellectual objections that are often heard can be anything from the problem of evil to evolution. Emotional objections may include Christian hypocrisy or the doctrine of hell. Volitional objections often take the form of objecting to Christianity, where we feel that biblical morality restricts our choices. And by the way, in the future, I definitely plan to explore each of those objections and much more in future episodes. But for the purpose of this video, let's keep going. So, the types of objections can also overlap. To use the examples that I just listed, the problem of evil might be both an intellectual and an emotional objection. But now I want to leave these examples behind and talk about just the objections themselves that apply to really anything in life. When it comes to intellectual, emotional, and volitional objections, sometimes we think we are objecting in one way where we might be actually objecting in another way. So, for an example, I sometimes have a tendency to over intellectualize things. I may be approaching something purely as an intellectual and mental matter. I may be dealing with it primarily or solely in the mind, and it may not even occur to me that it might be something else. And then I've also had the experience of, at some later point, it being made very clear to me that the actual root of the matter resided deeper within me, and that my pushback and struggling with the matter was more of an emotional or volitional nature. And I bring that up because I think that points to the key to asking good questions when wondering about life and pursuing truth in any matter. And that is embracing discomfort whenever and wherever it meets us. As humans, we have a very natural tendency to flinch away from discomfort, numb ourselves to it, distract ourselves from it, cover it up with something real quick. But I think that if we want honesty with ourselves and truth in any matter, I think that starts with being curious, um, which often means detaching from kind of the psychological safety bumpers that we have set up. This also means seeking to be as clear as possible with ourselves, not just with our intellects and what we think, but also with our innermost selves. Some people refer to it as the heart, some as the soul, some as the inner man, and whatnot, but the point remains the same. We are complex, multifaceted beings, and as such, no part of ourselves operates as an island. Our mind interacts with our motivations, interacts with our experiences, interacts with our fears, interacts with our hopes, and so on. If we do not have as clear a view as possible of all of these things and seek to connect these things within ourselves, then we massively stunt our intellect in pursuing honesty and truth in anything. This can take the form of neglecting the information that's provided by our fears, by our motivations and desires, neglecting the more comprehensive picture of human experience. You may be familiar with the famous psychologist and psychiatrist Carl Jung. He has a quote that I find really interesting where he says, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Now, Jung's words might sound a little bit intense or even offensive, but I think he's hitting on something important here, which is as humans, like I mentioned earlier, it's much easier for us to flinch away from that which makes us uncomfortable, including that which makes us emotionally and psychologically uncomfortable. It's easy to distract ourselves or to remain comfortable in what we're used to or what feels good or to align our beliefs with what we want to be true. He refers to this as imagining figures of light. However, he says that true enlightenment comes from making the darkness conscious instead. And often, this is a process that is very, very uncomfortable because it includes looking into things that maybe aren't obvious to us, asking questions that are really uncomfortable, being honest with ourselves about certain feelings or fears or various things that maybe we don't want to be feeling. It's considering options that are scary to us. Often, asking these types of questions and being willing to look at things in a certain way can throw into jeopardy some of the most important aspects of our lives, like the way that we understand and perceive ourselves, the way that we understand and interact with the world around us and the people around us. It involves questioning the feelings and the beliefs that you may hold very dear. Needless to say, leaning into discomfort is much easier said than done, right? I think it's normal for us to desire and seek stability, peace, confidence in the ground that we stand on. And leaning into discomfort can make us feel like the ground underneath us in our lives is shaking, crumbling, falling out from underneath us, where we're flailing midair. And I don't want to discount that. I don't want to discount the fact that leaning into discomfort can feel terrifying, painful, isolating, fill in the blank. So I feel like this kind of begs the question of how does one do this besides a commitment to leaning into discomfort? What does that look like? And while I think there's a good bit to be said here, I don't think it has an entirely straightforward answer. I think some healthy questions to ask could be, what if I am missing something here? What if I'm actually wrong here? What are other possibilities here besides the one that I'm immediately attaching to? What motivations or biases of mine might be coming into play here that I should be aware of? Is there something here that I actually might be trying to avoid? Like I referenced earlier in the video, it could be asking, are my objections here of an intellectual nature? Could they maybe be of an emotional nature? Are they volitional? What is the root of this thought, this feeling, this reaction, etc., that I'm having? And it's not only just asking these questions, it's sitting with them. Sometimes it's exploring these feelings, exploring these thoughts, exploring these possibilities. And there's not always going to be an immediate answer. But when it comes to more specific questions and situations, that's something that only you can know. It's the things that whisper to you from the back of your mind when you're laying in bed at night and there's no distractions, or the things that you try to distract yourself from when you let your mind wander. It's the things that you don't want to look full in the face. And while this process, like I've said, it can be incredibly uncomfortable, it is good. And and I would say too, on top of, oftentimes these things are serious things or connected to serious things. I think it's also okay to be a bit playful here, to be curious, to play around with different possibilities instead of immediately attaching to one, to be open to the different feelings and thoughts that you actually have, to ask questions and explore things with other people, and being willing to spend some time with these things. And by the way, when I say you, I mean the general you, which absolutely includes myself. In these videos, when I say you, I am talking just as much to myself. And I don't want to pretend that leaning into discomfort and asking difficult questions and all this type of stuff is something that I've mastered, because I haven't. I think it's supposed to be a lifelong pursuit, something that we're meant to grow in. It's not something that you arrive at, but something that you keep pursuing and keep choosing over and over again. Thank you so much, by the way, for listening to me ramble a bit. I know that this episode is probably going to be quite a bit shorter, a bit more conversational, but I just had some thoughts because I think that this stuff is really, really important and foundational. Please feel free to leave me your thoughts down below. I know that I am quite slow to respond, but I love reading each and every comment, and I just so appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts, sharing your stories, and all that. I'd love if you consider liking, sharing, subscribing. That means so much to me. In the next video, we'll be talking about a topic that's come up a couple of times in the comments section and one that I hear about a lot and I think is so important, which is the topic, is faith blind? We hear that term blind faith a lot, and I really want to take a look at that. And so that is the topic of the next video, and I hope that you will stick around to watch it. It's going to be fun, and I'm excited to see what you guys think. So if you have made it to the end of this video, thank you just so much. I so appreciate having you here. I'll see you in the next video. Much love.